book hauls. I freaking hate and abhor book hauls. By the way, welcome back. Okay, I wanted to open with some drama today. Basically, I don't like book hauls. I think book hauls are just reducing Booktube into aesthetics, okay? It's all of it right now. Booktube is entirely about aesthetics, okay? The whole thing has devolved into aesthetics. Back in the day, it used to be about reading books. I remember when I was, like 4 or 5 years ago, I only used to read non-fiction, okay? Self-help books and stuff like that. And also books about history. And Booktube was the place that actually introduced me to fiction, sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, thriller books, mystery books especially. Then I moved to fantasy books. I really loved fantasy books. I stuck with them. I think they're fun. Well, countless number of fantasy books, some 40, 50, have been introduced to me through Booktube. So fundamentally, to me, Booktube really, back in the day, 2017, 16, 14, it used to mostly for me be about reading books. Today, what we have is a place where there's too many book hauls, and every book haul continues to degrade everything because essentially the entire freaking platform is reduced to just aesthetics. How many beautiful covers can I shove into my shelf and cram there without even having read them? My goodness, I remember a few weeks ago, by the way, I actively dislike and ban these videos from showing up in my For You page. But for some odd reason, YouTube keeps shoving them down my throat. So about 2 weeks ago, there was another book haul video. 30 books this booktuber had, and all of them, I am confident, were sent by publishers to that particular booktuber. And what happened was the booktuber kept showing the covers and then shoving the most beautiful covers into the bookshelf, and then basically just left everything else in the boxes, put them back in the boxes. And you had this weird situation where you had someone with books, and a lot of them, but likely haven't read any of them, and not there to read them, just there to farm views and aesthetics. And the whole thing has become a cycle that really kills good books. Okay, back in the day, good books used to drive Booktube. I was introduced to countless number of amazing books through Booktube. But however, fundamentally, the whole thing has now been degraded into just aesthetics. Let's talk about more problems. I remember I came across this particular post in Reddit by Fusky, and it basically says, Booktube is dead. Booktube was really interesting when I discovered it. I wouldn't guess people would read more books than before in modern times. And it spread to my country too. Mostly women aged between 15 to 25 started to make videos about their favorite books. The pioneers, absolutely. The idea was really good. I always want youth to read more and spread powerful information on internet. However, as I watched more, I saw that it became another good thing left on earth, which was ruined by capitalism. The book companies fed young people with lots of books as they secretly promoted them. Some people promoted around 30 new books every week and degraded books into good-looking materials. I don't think any 15-year-old person on YouTube would read 30 novels in a week. Others have actually chimed in. 20 above says, I have started to grow bored with some of the booktubers I watch. Not because of the YA content, which I have no problem with, but the fact that so many hauls and TPRs consist of books and arcs sent by publishers. It's all starting to just blur into the same exact thing with little variety or individuality. So So a lot of people fundamentally don't like the fact of what Booktube had become right now. But let's talk about another problem, as I said moments ago. The good books don't get the hype. So technically, good books don't get the hype that they deserve. Primarily because, we'll talk about this right now, it is a cycle. I like to call it the good book graveyard cycle. The good book graveyard cycle works in a very simple way. You have an average book that is being pushed by a publisher, okay? That is being pushed by a publisher, or it's from a famous author. And what happens thanks to capitalism, okay, is I sound like a socialist. I'm not. I'm a social democrat, but damn, I really don't like raw capitalism, because it can take beautiful things and essentially reduce it into numbers. So fundamentally, what happens is that the average book is marketed. That's the ultimate outcome. It could be from a famous author. It could be from a publisher trying to push it, a new author that they would like to push out there. What happens is this book goes on to be sponsored to the most famous booktubers, and suddenly they get a lot of views. When a video gets a lot of views and it goes semi-viral or viral in the community, suddenly a lot of people are covering that book. And so what happens is there is a feedback cycle. So the initial, bigger YouTubers get the sponsorship, those videos blow up, and essentially the book gets a lot of hype. Well, now a lot of smaller YouTubers start covering that book. And the outcome of this is the smaller booktubers get more views. And so even other booktubers, could be smaller, could be larger, who didn't pick up the trend earlier, start picking it up and reading it. And so it becomes a trend to read that book. So for example, if in Booktube, you'll find a lot of videos that are like, reading Booktube's favorite books, or TikTok's favorite books. Well, this is the good book graveyard cycle, okay? And so what happens is, a lot of this limited space, limited time that could be given to different books that are actually good is given to books that have a lot of money and backing from the industry. These books could be average, they could be good, definitely. There are some gems that are also famous, that also take up the space that they deserve, okay? The Way of Kings is one of them, Mistborn, Brandon Sanderson in general is one of them, Lies of Locke Lamora, a book that I really love in the fantasy genre, The Gentleman Bastards in general, is another particular series that takes up this space that it deserves. And there's quite a lot of other books like it. But there are a lot of countless other examples out there that essentially don't deserve the hype, but continue to get it because a lot of people watch the videos. Either it could be negative or positive video, but at the end of the day, what we have is the good book graveyard. The good books don't get the coverage that they deserve because they don't get the views. So, and also they don't get the sponsorships. So the whole thing has been reduced to making as much money as you can possibly make and getting as many views as you can possibly get to make more money. And the good book graveyard cycle basically starts with famous average dull books getting all the attention, and because they get more attention, they get even more attention, which leads to the smaller good book not getting the coverage it deserves. So good books have been sidelined, and good books don't get hype in the Booktube anymore. Books that get the views, and books that essentially get the audience watching, and books that get the sponsorships get the hype. That's it. So you see, Booktube has gone from a place to read, to encourage reading, and to get good recommendations for good books, to essentially a place where even if you're recommended a book, you just get recommended the average famous book, okay? But let's talk about, so good books don't get a hype, and the whole thing has been reduced to numbers. That's two problems, but the worst problem that it has is reading becomes a chore, right? Reading becomes a job. Reading is no longer fun. I used to read books for fun. I hate reading books now. I hate them almost like I feel forced to read these books. And the whole thing has been reduced to just trying to get as many views as is possible. I really have decided to stop doing that recently, just recently, okay? Essentially trying to divert and have different types of videos in my YouTube channel, topics that I think are not covered a lot out there, and I'm going to try and cover them in the channel, but ultimately, it does mean, by the way, I'm going to be making less reviews, okay? Because I'm going to be reading less books, because here's something, I'm going to be reading healthily. I'm not going to be reading as part of a job or make it a chore. Booktube reduces reading to a chore. I really have a lot to say about this topic, and I want to make a separate video on it, and I hope you stay tuned for that. So this is why I think Booktube is essentially toxic. the book hauls and the everything else that is done, a lot of things that are done, reduce books to just aesthetics. It's not about reading, it's not about sharing amazing books that we love. It used to be like that. Now it's just about money, views. Good books also don't get hype. And the good book graveyard is a real problem. It's a real cycle that is vicious cycle that kills a lot of people that deserve a lot more hype. Anyway, I hope that you did enjoy this video, and I hope that you took something from it, and I would like to hear from you. What do you think of Booktube? Do you think it has gone downhill, or do you think it's really doing fine? Have a nice day.